Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
You know, think back to when you were in high school, when you were in college, if you can't quite think back to high school, you probably looked around. Well, I'll speak for myself, right? You looked around and you know, that he's really sharp, right? Or he's a partier. He knows how to have fun. He's always in a good mood or whatever it is. Very athletic. This person's very athletic. All sorts of characteristics that we looked at and we admired. And we aspire to those sorts of things. And at no point in time did anybody ever say, wow, that person's a connector. It never dawned on us. Things might have happened from time to time. Yeah, he knows a lot of people, she knows lots of people, but we never really thought that, hey, that's an attribute that we need to aspire to. And then you start getting along in business and you realize that, wow, that is really a great attribute to have. Today I've got a guest on, Steve Spiro. Steve's one of those master connectors. He has over 41,000 contacts. And he and his, he's got a co-host, Rob Genovese. They do a show. It's a weekly LinkedIn Live. I've seen it. I've been on it. It's called the Master Connector Show, and they really do a great job getting a lot of guests on there, a lot of really unique guests, and because they're both really master connectors, they bring in some good people. They're connected to some really good people. Just some side information on Steve. He started a company right out of college. He got into advertising, but then he eventually pivoted out of advertising into technology. And now he's a business automation consultant in addition to being this connector. He's a published author. He's got a book out there, The TAO of a Master Connector. And it's the way of how an introvert became a master connector. And so you'll find that Steve is big on professional development. He loves to inspire people to get out of their comfort zone. Steve, well, the other thing I want to point out here is Steve is a black belt, 4th degree black belt in karate and 1st degree in jiu-jitsu. I didn't say that right, but don't mess with Steve. And you have your own studio too, correct?
I did at one point, not anymore. How you doing, Frank? Great to see you.
Good
Appreciate that.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
The show's
it's
over.
A mouthful. It's a lot of stuff, but I appreciate it. I want to go back to your story. So you're right. Like nobody ever says, hey, that person's a connector. But growing up, I was none of those other things either. Like I was not the most athletic. I was bullied. I was picked on. I was when they were picking teams, whether it be basketball or dodgeball, I was the last or never picked. Like, I mean, that's who I was, just like this nobody growing up. Like I barely, felt like I even was, people even saw me or even knew who I was. That was cool, kind of how I grew up. You know what I mean? So just crazy. And now be called the Master Connector. And by the way, what's going on, friends? It's Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming out at you live and direct. I got to say that. It's part of my signature. But anyway, but good to have good to be on your show. And it was great being on your call the other last night and having you on the show as well. So it's just good to be with you and your community today.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. We kind of have parallel lives. I mean, I wasn't the last picked. I don't know that I was super athletic either, but when currently we have parallel lives. I mean, you have a huge network of people. I have a huge network of people. We've met through the wonder of what we'll call LinkedIn. It's just kind of randomly connected. I don't think anybody introduced us, so we just kind of stumbled on each other. And it's just neat to know that other people out there are serving the world in a similar way. Saying similar things. So it's great. And I've got to meet Rob as a result of that. But, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. You were the last kid to be picked. You're this introvert. How did this master connector thing happen? Was there a point where you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing here, or it just kind of stumbled into it and realized, oh my gosh, I'm making cookies here, right? Or whatever it is, right? I'm really good at this.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's been a progression. I mean, coming out of college, so I went, my dad had a liquor store, got out of, I decided not to go into that. He dissuaded me from going into that. Him and his partner got held up gunpoint multiple times. But I had creative talent. Maybe the dyslexia that I had kind of helped me become a creative problem solver and think, okay, creativity would be a better way to go. So when I'm going into advertising marketing, went to high school and college for that, got out, couldn't get a job. So it was forced entrepreneurship. I started a company. I had a small advertising agency in New York City. And then also parallel to that, as you said, started training in the martial arts since '83. So fourth degree in Goju Karate and a first in jujitsu, like you said. And my wife's a black belt as well. So life's interesting in a household of two black belts, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think all those little things started to add, little pieces to the puzzle. Okay. So when I had the advertising company, I had horrible people skills. Horrible. Like I was the guy, like if you said, "Hey, Steve, I was thinking about this or whatever," I'd be like, "You're wrong." Not like, "Well, I know how you feel. And if I was out in your shoes, I'd feel the same way. But let me tell you what I found." No, it's like, "You're wrong." Like
Yeah.
in your face, you're wrong. And then, so my partner says to me one day, because we were hiring people, and he's like, "Hey, good news. The company is going to fund you and send you to a Dale Carnegie course, how to win friends and influence people," right? And that was another piece of the puzzle, although a lot of that teaching didn't manifest until much later. But that was a piece of the pie. And then obviously martial arts. I was able to perform and be in front of the class as a teacher, right? But not, but that was in a very tight box, right? So all these things were pieces, but I was broken and wounded and so hurt, and I avoided people. I actually traveled. I commuted in. I know if you're in the suburbs or middle America, you're used to having you grew up, probably went to the same elementary school as most of the people, junior high school, middle school, then high school, and then eventually go to college. And there's community, and you knew people. And so my high school, I commuted in from the suburbs of New York City into the city, so there's zero connection. I would commute in, commute out. College was the same thing. So I had no connection with humans. I really didn't. No real true human connection. But I was driven and focused to succeed. My parents struggled financially, and I always had a chip on my shoulder to prove other people wrong. So there was that other piece of me. There was like that dichotomy of, being broken and wounded, but also driven, and so basically what happened is, I'm doing well in the advertising world. I'm succeeding. And a gentleman who I got introduced to was an extremely successful entrepreneur, again, driven and motivated. So I was like, okay, he's challenged me. And he said, besides getting me in a path of self-development, books and audios, networking, he said, "I need you to meet 3 strangers every day. I want you to do it. It's gonna help you." And I'm like, I started doing it. And, in New York, if you talk to strangers, you're going to get shot, kidnapped, or killed. But I did it, stretched me, got me out of my comfort zone, and started that path of being this connector. And, I started going to networking meetings and started to meet, I'd be randomly like, at the gym, talk to somebody, get his number. I would go be at Starbucks on the line, get his number, whatever. Like that's kind of stuff that happened, and started building a pretty big network in my phone. Then LinkedIn kicked in, and that started growing from there. But it was a progression, but it wasn't until COVID where I really it just shifted for me. I started to come up with what my mission in life is going to be. And we had a lot of time on our hands in the thick of COVID. And I was like, I really want to uplift and inspire and to be the light for people. And so I had this vision. I started being asked to speak even prior to COVID, but it really kicked in COVID, but it was a lot of virtual. And so I was like, I want to use this talent that I have, this ability to be able to really connect people. And a lot of it was talking about, when I get on stage, I talk about authenticity and being authentic and being others focused and having kind of no agenda to conversations. So all that started to shift. And I never wanted to be called the master networker, because networking, unfortunately, especially younger people, is kind of looked at as like solicitation or prostitution. So true connection is really, and that's what I'm all about. And that's why Master Connector has became my moniker, my personal brand, and I would like to speak about. So anyway, that was a really long answer to your short question. So but I felt like I needed to kind of give context.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. you know, my impression of you is it's more than just connecting. There's a level of authenticity there, because I can see somebody like you, somebody telling someone like you, your former you, saying, "Hey, get out there and connect," and you would just be very, you know, someone could be very mechanical about it, right? Okay, I talked
I
to,
was.
you know, when did the authenticity kick in? You realize that it's like, okay, I'm not just checking a box here. Okay, I've got 3 people. It's noon. I can go home. It's okay. I got to do something with this.
Yeah. And you're right. In the beginning, it was very mechanical. I mean, like, you know, listen, maybe it's different again in the middle of America, but in New York, besides the killing thing, they also think people like I had a guy call me in the middle of the night, leave a voice message. He wanted me to meet him in a hotel, like crazy stuff, right? Like, you know, like you meet somebody stranger. Like I think I would, you know, I'd be in a restaurant urinal next to somebody and I'd start talking and get a phone up, like just weird stuff, just bizarre stuff. Like I wouldn't do that today, but I would do it then. And so it just was awkward and weird, and I had all sorts of crazy stories that happened. But eventually, I was like, you know what? I want to do something with this, and I want to really be better and more effective. And I really started to understand that true connection is not just about, you know, you're connected on LinkedIn and you have another number, another name, another number, but it's real, true getting to know somebody and understanding their needs, their wants, their desires, and how you could add value and help them. And that shift again happened during COVID for the most part, because I was doing like, I want to say 10, probably about 10 Zoom calls a day, because that's all we could do it back then. And I started to understand, and I saw the value of, as I would share and people would get like being authentic, I was able to tell my story, and then people opened up with their story, and they started to get emotional. Some of them cried, and like, Steve, I'm telling you stuff I've never told anyone. I'm telling you, like, we just met, you know, and it became very fulfilling and rewarding. And so, and from a business perspective, it also became very effective. The last 3 years have been the best financial years of my entire life. And I believe it's because I've learned how to properly connect. It's not like I'm not getting paid for being the quote unquote master connector, but connecting with people and being others focused. The law of reciprocity kicks in, the law of sowing and reaping, right? The universal laws, right? You know, and so you plant corn, you get back corn. You don't get back apples, right?
Yeah.
So you plant good, you get back good, and you typically get it back in abundance. You plant 3 or 4. I call it the secret of the corn. It was it's actually in my book. But you know, you plant 3 kernels of corn, and over time you water it, you fertilize it, whatever, and then eventually, maybe 6 or 8 months later, a stalk comes up and there's about whatever 12 or 15 ears of corn, and in those ears of corn are each 100 or so each. So you get thousands and thousands from the 3 or 4 kernels that you planted. You get back thousands and thousands from the few. It's the law of increasing return. So that's kind of what has happened to me, but it's not from an agenda perspective. Okay, I know if I do these things, I'm going to get rewarded. No, I'm doing it and I'm getting rewarded, but I'm doing it because it really warms my heart and it makes me feel good about me. And I really enjoy inspiring people and helping people and being that light for people.
No, absolutely. That's who you are. And I want to be clear for the listeners. He's connecting with people, but he's also connecting people. In other words, he meets person A, and then meets person B, and he's, you know, you're hooking those people up. So it's not like you're this broker, this conduit. Everything's got to flow through Steve. It's like, no, you're connecting people. Yeah.
Before this call, before doing this, I had a call with a young lady, and you know, again, I do this a lot. I said to her, come up with some names on the people that I'm connected with, and I'll make introductions. And to your point, Frank, I'm not asking there's no finder's fee. In fact, when people come to me and say, hey, you know, all these people, you know, maybe we could work out a financial arrangement. I'm like, honestly, I don't want to do that. I really don't, because it's not what I'm about. But yeah, connect the dots, being authentic by connecting in a deep, meaningful way, right? Master connector, you know, even being a black belt, right? You know, you're connecting somebody, you know, a fist into their jaw. That's a connector, right? So there's a lot of sort of puns in the word master connector, master, black belt, double black belt.
Yeah.
4th degree is considered master level. So it's kind of pun to the name Master Connector.
Yeah, no, I want to draw out or focus on something you just said. I get people coming to me all the time. Hey, I've got a program. You get me people, I'll pay you, or you get me clients. I don't want to be your sales rep.
Yep.
That's the first thing. I don't want to be somebody's sales rep. I don't want to learn another product. But
Absolutely.
God forbid, if you enter into an arrangement like that and somebody you connect to another finds out you're getting paid, that just destroys your credibility.
Sure. Yep.
And that's refreshing to hear. I mean, I know other people who are like that. I had a conversation with someone you certainly know, you referenced in your materials, Bob Berg, the Go Giver.
Bob. Yes.
Awesome guy. He's kind of the same way. He's like, I get it. Some people, that's just their business model. They want to be paid. He said, I'm not like that. I just want to hook people up, and trust that it's going to come back to me.
Absolutely.
This will put you a little bit on the spot, just coming off the top of my head here. Unusual connections you've made, or hey, there's something wild that successful that came out of this. Maybe not for you, but people that you connected.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the first thing that comes to my mind. So there was a gentleman that, at one point I put a LinkedIn ad for people that wanted to be a speaker on my LinkedIn live show, Master Connector show. And he applied and we wound up having a conversation, and I have certain parameters. And I knew from kind of the beginning of the call, because one of my parameters is I want to make sure that they have a pretty significant LinkedIn following. So before the call, I knew he didn't have a large LinkedIn following. But I figured, let me get on the call. Who knows? And I have broken that made the exceptions to those rules. So as a guy who wasn't born in Australia, born in the Carolinas, and then moved, as a young adult to Australia and spent a good amount of like 12 years there. Came back and he was struggling doing, being a comedian and speaker, but nice guy and craving more out of life. And you could just tell he was struggling. He needed a mentor in his life, and mentorship has become such an invaluable piece of my life. And occasionally I'll pay it forward. So we started a conversation, and we didn't take the call in the direction of having him as a guest in the show, but we developed a friendship and started working collaboratively on some projects, business projects. And you could speak to him directly. He'll speak highly of us and the relationship. And we've had him, and this is a stranger I met on LinkedIn. We've hosted him. He slept at our home. I flew twice to the Carolinas to again, I'm happily married. This is not anything that if anyone's mind's going that, it's nothing like that. Okay. Just friendship. It's a friendship. It's been amazing. And from a LinkedIn conversation to, just crazy, how you can take something off a platform like LinkedIn and develop these incredibly meaningful relationships. And we're friends for life. And under normal circumstances, we'd have zero chance to ever be in each other's life. But because of this and the perspective of being a go-giver and helping and being authentic, and he shared things with me when we had that first conversation, I guarantee he wouldn't have normally shared to people.
Yeah.
But because I opened up and shared, he opened up.
Well, yeah, I think that underscores the point of just being open to the possibilities. I think a lot of time, when people think about connecting, they're calculating before they're connecting, right? They're just, okay, what's in this? They want to know the end of the story before they buy the ticket to the movie. And sorry for all the metaphors, but and so then they'll pass up on things like that.
Right.
They'll totally pass up, and then not realize that, wow, that person's, they weren't a good financial planner client for me, but their brother-in-law is huge, and just because I've done this thing, and that's where the payback's at. It's not calculated, but it happens.
It does. Yeah, I've learned, and I heard you say that in your networking hub call, it's you got to get beyond. First of all, you never want to be I'm looking to get this. You don't want to go in that. No agenda. I like to be others focused, but when I do connect with people, I'm like, I number one, I want to help you, but number two, who do you know? Right? It's like not you never know who they know. It's Yeah, everyone knows. I think they back in the day before social media, everyone said, everyone knows 300 people. I think these days it's more like everyone knows like 1,200 people, right? When you count all the people in their social media, but you just don't know, right? And I'll give you a quick story. I know you're big on networking also, but I was part of another networking group that begins with the letter B. I'll just keep it at that. But I
Okay.
cut my teeth big time on it, and it really
Yeah.
was. I really value it. And I had a guy in the group. His name was Freddie, and blue collar guy, dropped the F bomb every 3 seconds. He was a construction guy. He built homes, did construction. Zero opportunity to do business with him. I was at the time I was doing outsourced HR, and you needed a minimum of employees, full-time employees of 10 or more to be applicable. He wasn't going to be a great. So I could have just said, forget Freddie. Freddie was the best referral source I've ever had in my entire life. He grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut. He knew the CEOs of some incredibly large companies and got me, meetings with those people. But if I had looked at Freddie, I'd be like, yeah, blue collar F bomb guy, But you got to look beyond that.
No, I totally agree. You have every contact has opportunity. You just need to kind of
Yeah.
explore it. Let's shift gears here. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about you and what you're doing, how people can support you. You have the book out there, the Tao of a Master Connector. People can get on
Yep.
Amazon. I'm sure.
Amazon,
Yeah.
Audible. They can order the paperback or the digital version or Audible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you have a business automation business as well. You want to talk about?
Yeah, we won't talk a lot about that because it's just highly unreferable. It's just very nichey. So,
Okay.
but the big thing that I want to talk about is I'm looking to do more speaking. Right? I mean, I'm
Okay.
an inspirational speaker. So my website is spiro-global.com. You could also find me at stevespiro.com as well. But my goal, my vision, Frank, is to be the light, uplift, inspire, encourage, to be paid to travel the world, speak and inspire, and be a beacon of light, right? And that's really what I'm looking to do. I mean, I love speaking about, from a business perspective, breaking down barriers in this complex digital era to create real human connection. And the world is great, but it's super connected, but it's also created isolation. It's created barriers, right? The screen has become a barrier. A lot of the younger folks coming into the workforce today are the same folks that were sitting on a couch next to their best friend when they was 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, texting each other rather than talking. And so there's this digital divide. And so how do you break those barriers? If you're an introvert like me, how do you make a real connection? How do you get over those barriers? If you're a sales professional looking to get more, more sales in front of the right people, how do you break the barrier and the digital barrier that people hide behind, or the barrier of the wall that comes up when somebody who knows you're about to sell them something, right? And so those are some barriers that I help people break and get in contact and connect with the right people and start the conversation more authentically versus looking to sell and agenda based and being more others focused and no agenda. So those are the kind of things I speak about, and I just love doing it. And so yeah, that's really what I'm looking to really take to the next level.
You have incredible passion. Steve Spiro, he's the author of The Tao of the Master Connector. Get a copy, and you can listen to the Master Connector show. It's every week. We're recording on
Wednesdays.
Thursday. I was going to say,
Yeah, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. EST.
Yeah.
We go for 30 minutes. It's a great show. Obviously, we have incredible guests like Mr. Frank Egan. But we've had amazing guests. I mean, I blow my own mind sometimes when we have somebody come on. I'm like, wow, this person, like, how do we find this person? But it's just amazing. But yeah, they can go to masterconnector.show, and that's the website for the show, and they could see all the up and coming episodes. Believe it or not, we're booked out with guests all the way to like end of March 2025. It's crazy.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, it's very professional.
Thank you.
I mean, I think Rob helps a lot with that, or maybe it's you. I don't know. I don't know. But it's the creative. I mean, it's just it looks. When I say professional, like it's like a production. It's like you're watching the news or some show. It's very well done.
I
I would
appreciate that.
imagine they can see upcoming programs. They can catch past ones too. They're on YouTube.
Yeah. So besides it does reside once it broadcast live on YouTube, it stays there, but also it gets downloaded to Spotify and Apple Podcast, also named the Master Connector Show. So it's there if people want to go, because a lot of times people, I think, like to be on the road and they can go listen to something on one of those platforms.
That's great. And I think 30 minutes is an awesome time.
Oh yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. I know you got lots going on. You've got to do some connecting, but it's wonderful you took the time to share with people.
I appreciate it. This is a great opportunity. And Frank, keep up the great work. You're making a big impact and really adding tremendous value for people. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.